Welcome to the Headley Highlight Show's Uplifting Corner. And the Uplifting Corner is here to inject a different type of energy into the space. So before I jump straight onto it, can I just say thank you to everyone who's listened, come back, and enjoys my show and my Uplifting Corner. Don't forget to make a donation at deniseheadley.com. I'm very partial to 3 rings and chips and a Miranda or a bit of Bitcoin. And when you go to my YouTube channel, click the bell notification and select all, and you'll get all of my uploads as they arrive. I'm being so expedient with my introductions. That was 35 seconds. My show often covers matters that deserve serious discussion. But in life, we need light as well as darkness. So here is this week's contribution to that. It's a little known news story about fairness and equality in a world that seems to be losing its moral compass, and I hope you enjoy it. For decades, global mobility has operated on an uneven axis. African travellers face exhaustive scrutiny, escalating fees, arbitrary exclusions, while Western passport holders move across African borders with relative ease. That imbalance is now being challenged head-on. In December 2025, the United States imposed full or partial visa suspensions on 39 countries, disproportionately affecting African nations. And you didn't hear that on the news, did you? No. Following its placement on the US full ban list in December, Niger opted for reciprocity and announced an indefinite suspension of visas for US nationals. Absolutely fabulous. Niger has a transitional government in place at the moment. Western narratives usually articulate it as a junta. That language is only referred to when referring to African countries. And their Prime Minister is Ali Mahamin Limi Zain. So well done to you, Ali Mahamini Lemi Zain, for barring US nationals so that they now have to jump through the rigors that Africans have to when travelling to other parts of the Western Hemisphere. Niger also later announced that this was not a severing of ties, but a recalibration. By mirroring Washington's restrictions, Niger is seeking to send a clear message that access to Niger is not automatic and respect is reciprocal. The decision by Niger follows the principle of reciprocity, adopted by Mali last October when they introduced a $10,000 refundable entry bond for US tourists and business travelers. And in Burkina Faso, our darling of Africa, Ibrahim Touré, has also introduced a ban because there was an attempt on his life and those individuals flew in on tourist visas, many of them via the routes that they have just banned. Mali's view is that placing Malian travellers and American travellers on an equal footing within the global mobility system is beneficial for all. Critics cite potential losses in tourism, which invariably is a bleeding, sucking from in communities trade, which only benefits previous colonial systems in many places. Investment or diplomatic goodwill could potentially be lost because of these policies, but that overlooks a less tangible but equally consequential outcome: psychological sovereignty. Isn't that lovely? Psychological sovereignty. It's a bit like financial sovereignty. It's meaning you have dominion over your psyche. When an African nation asserts themselves against global superpowers, it reshapes how their citizens and the diaspora understand their place in the world. And this, I think, is so important in terms of how that rebalancing is taking place. And an important thing about psychological sovereignty is that people who are able to express it, when they get into positions of power and influence, because that is like it's perforated their whole being. When they move into certain places, that the need to create equity is so important for them. I mean, think about Ibrahim Traoré. Think about all of the leaders in Mali and Niger and in that sphere of influence. They are influencing the wider diaspora of young people in Africa. They're also influencing the wider world because of the stance that they're taking in terms of self-determination and having that space where they're saying, look, it's time for things to be done in a respectful way, not in a barbarous way. Let's not go in and kidnap presidents or blow up pipelines. No, why don't we just have a conversation and try to come to an agreement? And if we can't do that, then we don't want to be participating in your space. And you know what else has come to my mind? I don't know how many people were looking at it, but there was the Africa Cup over the last couple of weeks. And one particular fan who came from Congo stood in the position of, oh my God, his name's left me right now. Oh my God, shame. Patrice Lumumba. And he went to every single match and stood like that. And that has brought the memory of Patrice Lumumba, who was one of Africa's greatest sons, one of the worst assassinations that took place in terms of putting Africa back so many decades and hundreds of years, because you might as well call it that because of what's going on there. But essentially, he brought the conversation about Lumumba back to a whole new generation, because everywhere he went, people started to follow what he was doing. They stood in the stance where there's a bronze statue of Lumumba, and they stood exactly in the same stance as him. And then he became the fan that embodied everything about the Africa Cup that just went on, because Lumumba has been dead for however long, over 60 years. But because of his authenticity and because of his need to address and have parity, his spirit and his essence, it lives on. And that was personified with this man's stance. I must tell you his name. And what this guy has done by doing this, rebalancing his own the quiet strength he demonstrated, it's just reverberated everywhere. Because what he does is he stands up in the pose for the match. Okay, he's a massive football Congolese fan. He stands in the pose and he doesn't move. He doesn't move at all. And he stands holding the pose for the whole match and holding his arm up. And it was just a marvel. His name is Michael Kuka Mabalundinga. I think that I probably said it wrong. So Michael Kuka Mabaladinga. And if you just go in and type in Patrice Lumumba fans celebrate, you will see the impact he had. Because now on the lips of every African who watched that Africa Cup, whatever match it was, he was something that people were talking about. And therefore they now are asking about, if you didn't know, who was Patrice Lumumba? What did he do? And why was he so important? And you know what? I saw this TikTok video, and the Mail have a TikTok, the Mail newspaper has a TikTok plays. They had a biracial woman talking about the fan, and and you know what she did? She never mentioned Lumumba's name. She wasn't allowed to. She said, an African leader. And I thought to myself, that just goes to show you the power and also the ability for people to allow themselves to be co-opted into, like, for want of a better word, a lie and upholding certain things, because you don't even want to be able to say the guy's name because you know what, you want to get the slot next week. How about that? Anyway, well, this is a slightly different uplifting corner, but the point of the uplifting corner, it was essentially to talk about the rebalance. And my story about Michael Kuka Mabaladinga is the rebalancing. And it just goes to show you that people who often don't see themselves as powerful, boy, we are so powerful. And never forget that. Come back next week, make a donation, and I hope you enjoyed it. You might have a few thoughts too. Jump on the mic, don't be shy, and cut!